it's my pleasure to welcome you and many of you back to our second session for our Zoom conversations on Israel. Today, we will focus on the over 20% of Israeli citizens who are Arab Israelis, citizens of Israel, sometimes also self-designated of Israeli Palestinian citizens of Israel, all a little bit in flux. We have two experts with us who I'm very happy to briefly introduce, two esteemed colleagues. Dr. Salman Elbedour received his PhD at the University of Minnesota. He teaches at Howard University School of Education. His fields of research, among many others, are psychopathology, children exposed to political unrest, family conflict, school and community violence, and the Israeli-Arab conflict. Dr. Morad Elsana teaches with us both Israel studies and Arab studies at American University. Prior, he served as a professor of public international law and international humanitarian law and international human rights law. Dr. Elsana holds a doctorate degree of juridical science from the American University Washington College of Law. He wrote his dissertation on the dispossession and recognizing indigenous land rights. Both Dr. Elbedour and Dr. Elsana are Israeli citizens who grew up as part of the Bedouin community in the Negev near Beersheba. So it's really both their personal experience and their research which qualifies them to talk about our topic today. And I'm really happy to give them maybe both first not more than 10 minutes for each, and then we will have a little discussion among us, and then we'll open it up in about half an hour to all of you. So I would ask Dr. Elbedour to start maybe giving us a little bit of perspective after this year of elections. Where is the Arab Israeli community today, and how did we get there? Salman, please.
Thank you for inviting me to join you, and thank you, Laura, thank you, Michael, and welcome back, Morad. After 7 years teaching together one course in Maryland, you know, it's fun to come back. Let us take, I think, you know, as Michael said, I'm a Bedouin, I'm Israeli, and I was living there. I'm here right now teaching at Howard, and I hope some of your questions will compare and contrast minorities across oceans, you know, Israeli minorities, African minorities. I think, you know, if you really take a look, just like, you know, over the last week, I was reading a little bit, you know, skimming some literature about minorities in Israel. Absolutely, as always, I say, this is really sad because the orientation is really, really theories of failure. And this is really typically of all of minorities. If you study, if you read, or, you know, if you go to literature review, the orientation is a little bit pathology, limitations, marginalization, powerlessness. And I think really this does not apply to some extent to the Israeli minorities, the Israeli Arab minorities in Israel. And I think, you know, today we'll present, our topic will focus on the joint list, and it will reflect a kind of theories of success of the Israeli society. And the success, as you will see it, is reflection of both powers, democracy and pluralism, which describe the Israeli society. And I think both pluralism and democracy are buffering system for minority, protective system, and we should continue to hold them. And pluralism and democracy, they feed each other and they enhance each other. As you will see, you know, from the second slide, we'll describe, let's go to the second slide. Hello?
We don't see a shared screen, I don't think.
Yeah, we don't see it. So again, you know, those are the two pillars here, pluralism. If you go back to the first one, the pluralism and the democracy of Israel is absolutely what distinguishes Israel in the Middle East, and I think what distinguishes Israel also in, with other countries. Those two pillars, if we keep them and maintain them, I think every citizen in Israel will continue to flourish, will continue to grow with hope. And again, Israel is very pluralistic society, and which is multi-ethnic. Compared to America, is more multi-ethnic. Let's go to the second one. Second slide. Yeah, I think, the election in Israel is very complex phenomena. And I think it's really more complex than the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I think there are so many, if you think about it, me and Morad were thinking about this, how can we approach this phenomena of the joint list? As old man, I says, hey, I will really look at the most recent factors that contributed to the emergence of this phenomena called the Arab joint list. I think the whole election is a very complex topic. It really cannot be captured by one factor or causes or forces. I think we need to look at it from multi-level, cultural variables, community variables. And I think, it will take maybe us more than maybe a week to discuss this ecology system, these forces that shape the emergence of the, the joint list. I don't even know how to pronounce it in English, joint list. Absolutely, I says, the phenomena of election is very complex, and I'm taking just like the last stages of the election, the 3 election waves that happened in the last year. If you take, absolutely, you will see this kind of table. Will give you the rate, the 3 rates, April rate, September rate, and just like, just 1 month ago rate. If you see the trend, there is dramatic increase among Arabs who are voting. If you take, for instance, almost a year ago, the first election in the last year, 68% the rate of the general population. If you look at the yellow, or whatever they call it, orange, 49% are Arabs, the rate of the Arabs who went for the election. You see the difference there down, you see 19% is the gap. And the Israeli Arab are lagging behind, almost 49 to 68, 19% is the difference. If you take just like the second election, again, in Israel, we had 3 elections the last year. You see the dramatic increase of the Arabic voters. 59, it jumped from 49 to 59. That means 10% increase. Look at the Israeli general population, it went from 68 to 69, 1 point. See exactly the jump for the Israeli Arab. Now, the gap narrows from the first wave of election last year, it was 90. The second wave was 10. Let us look at just like, last month elections. Again, you see the increase, the significant increase of the Israeli Arab, 65% compared to 71, the general population, with difference that is 6 points. Now, the outcome, what are the forces that contributed to such increase? And this is reflection. If you see the orange color is represent the joint list. Let us go to the second one, the second slide. No, I think there is one before. I think somebody missed with the third one. Go to the next one. All right, you see the election here. In the last election, a month ago, 88% of the Arabs supported the joint list. 25% of the Arab, they went for the, what we call this, Israeli Jewish parties. Again, a huge number. And we will see why. Why such increase? Why such attachment to the Israeli, to the Arab joint? If you go to, so just remember this figure, 88%, they went directly to the joint list. This is the first time the Israeli Arab absolutely are bounded, looking for their own, somebody to represent them. And we will look at the forces, why, that shape this election. Let us go to the slide one before. In fact, I just want to remind you, while I was reading yesterday newspaper, it was fun. In that time, look at this, right now, only 25% from the previous slides, they went to the Israeli Jewish. Take a look during Rabin's time, 50% of the Israeli Arab went directly to the Israeli Jewish parties. That is in what? In 1992. I was teaching at Ben Gurion. It was fun. So 52% of the votes, of the Arab votes, went directly to the party of Rabin in that time. It's called what? Morad. It was Marach, yeah? Now, let us take the first time that Prime Minister Netanyahu went to power. 22% of the Israeli Arab, they went to the Likud. They went to Netanyahu. Netanyahu in 1996. This is the first time that Netanyahu comes to power. Now, look at times of Rabin, 52. And this reflection really of the Oslo Accord, the peace environment, everything is there was hope that things are changing. Now, even the first time that when Netanyahu came, there is still hope that this young guy will bring some positive change. He brought so much change, but for the Israel Arab, we'll see the next one. But now, if you think about it, since Netanyahu, the first time he received the 22% of the Arab votes, the number dropped completely. Since then, only 5% of the Israeli Arab, they vote for the Likud. Just see the trend that it goes down completely. And the overall, it was 52 during Rabin in 92 to 22 during the first term of Netanyahu. Now, I think it's less than 5% even. Now, if you think of the last elections here in 2019, 28, I say that 81 went exactly of the Arab and rose to the joint list. Now, in the last election, 28 compared to 17 of the Arab votes went to what? To the Israeli Jewish party. Again, look at the difference, the serious, significant difference, a huge difference between 52, not long ago, 92, and up to date, almost the trend that the Israeli Arab no longer voting for Israeli Jewish parties. Now, why suddenly the emergence of the Arab joint? There are so many forces. Let us go to the next one. See how much was it close Netanyahu to Abbas long time ago, 1992. Let's go to the next one. Now, I am focusing only on the last election. In the last year, 3 elections happened. And absolutely 4 months ago, all of the indication that Gantz will win. Everybody was optimistic that Gantz, the Kahol Lavan, will win. But I think Netanyahu is lucky, and slowly he is emerging once again to be the lead. And why is that? And look at this. I'm talking about the Arab joint. The Arab joint and Netanyahu is absolutely becoming the enemies to each other. Reflection, the more Netanyahu is doing this, the Israeli Arab will do it, just like the opposite direction. And I will focus right now just a little bit, if you give me 5-7 minutes, Michael, I will address absolutely the forces, political, social. There are so many factors, but I'll address absolutely the most recent causes that shape or steer the cause of the Israeli Arab, to vote for the joint list. Let's go to the next one. Next one. I'm taking just like, I think one major force that really reawakened the Israeli Arab, absolutely Trump's and his plan. It's I will call it, everybody call it what? The slap of the century. For the Israeli, it was the deal of the century. For Israeli Arab, it's the slap of the century. It was out of the box. I don't want really to outline or to explain everything, but I will explain only one component of Trump out of the box plan and its effect directly on the votes of the Israeli Arab. And I will take the deal of the century, the first one. Based on President Trump plan, there is an annexion of territory. Annexing, at least, I think if I remember, at least 80 Israeli Arab villages or town. Absolutely, based on this plan, they have to be annexed to the Palestinian territory, which is the West Bank. Now, just like, in the middle of the night, 8 cities, large towns with history, with culture, suddenly they are inside right now Israel. The next day you will find them, there is a fence, and they're back to the Palestinians' territory. So all of these, absolutely, it's a kind of reactives. The at least 8 or 9 cities, there is absolutely what we call that in psychology, the loss of freedom. Israel, Israel is absolutely, it's a great country for this minority. Yes, there is a conflict because this is double identities of the Israeli Arab. Nationally they are Palestinians, and when it comes they are Israelis. There is a conflict. There is dissonance. There is absolutely cognitive dissonance, becoming, belong to these two camps. In fact, one time during Rabin, they were supposed to bridge the Israeli and the Palestinians. But here, suddenly, with Trump plan, just like, the middle of the night, you need to shift them, carry them, dislocate them to the Palestinian territory. There is a simple theory, naive theory in psychology, they call loss of freedom. Israel is supposed to be associated with freedom, associated with an attractive measure. If you tell your daughter, don't go with your friend who is very close friend to her, there is reactives. She will do the opposite. She will do the opposite. For the Israeli Arab in these villages, absolutely there is what we call this reactance to the loss of freedom. And absolutely one of the major reasons that the increase of the Israeli Arab vote for the joint list. Again, I will not address now. At the same time, for instance, exactly when Netanyahu came to the White House, shook hands with the President Trump, he went back to Russia. Remember that. Naimi, he released a kind of very, very nice Israeli citizen, and he forgot completely there was Israeli Arab in Turkey at the same time, in the same period, in the same week that was held by the Turkish authorities for months. So the double standards a little bit, absolutely, people are affected mentally by the double standards of this. So directly from the White House, he went to free and to release Naimi. Now, the warming ties with the Arab countries is also problematic for the Israeli Arab, because it means losing the cause of the Palestinians. So there is reaction. So simply the reaction for President Trump plan and the relocation made a kind of awakening these people, just like, you wake up. You wake up and you go to vote for your own party that will represent your interest. And so far, Netanyahu party in 1996, they were able to represent the interest of the Israeli Palestinians, but as the statistics show, no more, it's 5% or less who go to vote the Likud party. Let us take a look at Netanyahu absolutely character and behavior that shaped also, that contributed to this.
I think we should also give Morad a chance to talk in our audience.
Okay.
That would be great.
So I'll discuss only the second slide and I'm done. I'm done, Michael. Just the second slide for 2 minutes. Now, if you live in Israel, again, and absolutely really, especially if you live in Israel, you don't sense kind of this de-evaluation of mass media. But when you read about it, you see everything is just like a history of the evaluation of the Israeli Arab. Absolutely, for instance, take a look. This is absolutely one of the primary causes that led the Israeli Arab to go to vote for the joint list. Take a look at the statistic here, just like in the last year. Every day, Netanyahu, in any speech, he referred Jews and non-Jews. Jews and non-Jews. Take a look at the last second election in this year. Hey, in Elbedour, he comes in the morning, early in the morning, and he says the Arabs are flocking to the polls. And absolutely, this is a little bit insulting for every Israeli Arab, so they will go to do the opposite. There is, I don't know, it's a little bit sad that we are living in a time of incitement at this time. This was not happening, let us say, 20 years ago or 30 years ago. There is incitement against the Arab. I remember as a young kid, I used to go to celebrate the birth of Israel. Today, with this incitement, there is a withdrawal back. So they are looking for a new identity. And in the meantime, Gantz party did not provide the answer for the Israeli Arab. So not the Likud and not the blue and white, they did not offer any kind of hope or a kind of better future for the Israeli Arab. In fact, Gantz, I think he could easily get the Israeli Arab, but the first statement he said, we will form the government without the joint list. So it's a kind of which is really sad. But again, there is something a little bit weird happening in the last 5 years. Israel is typically, it's a great place. It is a great place. It's a kind of paradise. And we compare it to the United States, absolutely. There is so many assets about Israel, but the incitement in the last few years, I think troubling every Israeli Arab. And Gantz did not hug them. In fact, he excluded them. Therefore, there is no refuge, only to go back and to form their own, again, their identity, reactivate their identity. Absolutely. You don't accept me there, so there is reactance, so I will go to elect the Israeli, the joint list. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Salman, for setting this into perspective and also giving us a kind of trend about the Arab vote in the last 30 years or so. We'll just go on from here. Morad Elsana will tell us a little bit more about the role of the joint list today, and I think we'll see a few slides as well. Wonderful.
And I want to interject, if people are having difficulty seeing the slides because the little pictures are covering part of it, if you look on your screen where you have like the gallery view, there's a horizontal line that's just a one line, and if you click on it, it says hide thumbnail video, and you can see the whole presentation.
Thank you, Laura. Morad, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Salman. I'm happy to be here with all of you, and I would like to thank the Center for Israel Studies for giving us the opportunity to present a very important aspect of the politics in Israel today, and to talk a little bit about the role of the Arab Joint List, and also to give you a little bit background about what's going on and why is the politics in Israel like this, why they are unable to form a government, and what role the Joint List is playing in this one. First of all, I'd like to remind you a little bit about the Joint List and to tell you that the Joint List is, as it says here, is like the political alliance of all the main Arab political parties in Israel, which consist of Balad, Khadash, Tal, and the United Arab List, which is traditionally the main Islamic political party. And this is, the Joint List is becoming the third largest faction in the Knesset today. And this position enabled them to start to play a role that they want to play it, and they are really starting to play it as we can see today. The other important point that we have to remember is the rate of the people among the Arab minority in Israel who are voting to the Joint List, which is about 82%, which is a very high rate. And as Dr. Salman has presented previously, this is one of the maybe factors that are playing a very important role in what we are seeing today in Israel. So why we are seeing this picture and why we're talking about the Joint List in this way today and what role they are playing, for me, I see it as an attempt for the Arabs in general, led by the Arab List, to make a change in the politics in Israel. And this change can be divided into two parts. The first one, they want to change what we call the traditional balance between the right-wing bloc and the center-left bloc. That means the Arabs, maybe one of the sectors in the state of Israel that really feeling this situation and feeling the long rule for the right wing in Israel affecting their life and their situation in Israel. And the other aspect is related to the role they want to play in changing this situation. And mainly we can say here that the Joint List today is trying to, first of all, to show that it is a very legitimate and a strong partner, that nobody can ignore it, and especially the major Jewish parties in Israel. And they want, as I mentioned, to change, to define not only the government, they want to define the government. That means to determine and to decide who is going to be the prime minister in Israel. Is it Bibi Netanyahu or Gantz? And in case they can't do it, they want to define the type of government. That means they would like to get the ruling power more to the center left in Israel, and to prevent the regime, the long-time regime that we have been seeing in Israel, the long-time regime that has led to different changes. And this leads me to the question why the Joint List is insisting in this, playing this role, and why now? So these are two important questions that we are asking them. Answering the first one, we have to look back in the recent 20 years, especially after the Second Intifada and the changes on the political arena in Israel, that we start to see that in Israel, since 2000, the only ruling party has been the right-wing parties. The left-wing parties in Israel or bloc did not have any chance to affect or to determine the situation in Israel. And during that time, the right-wing government has been insisting on changing the character of the state from what we call the traditional balanced Jewish democratic state to more Jewish state only. And this has culminated to the recently legislated law, the basic law of nation-state law. And this policy of the right wing is trying or has been disfranchising the Arabs in Israel. So during the 20 years, right-wing ruling government have passed several laws that have further marginalized and disfranchised the Arabs in Israel. And these laws, we can see the recent one, as I mentioned, the nation-state law, which is the basic law, but also there were several laws that we did not get a chance to read about them and to hear about them like this one. So I would like to mention here, there were, like, for example, the Kaminsky Law. The Kaminsky Law is a piece of legislation that amended previously existing laws in Israel, but they have been affecting mainly the Arab population in Israel, those who are living in the general villages like in the Triangle and in the Galilee, but mainly the Arab population in the Negev and the unrecognized villages. And basically this law is trying to affect the laws and the punishments on what we call illegal buildings in these villages. So these punishments or these laws and the policy was more in the hands of the courts, that people were able to go to court in order to maybe save their houses, to claim for housing rights, and get their chance to be heard in the courts and to explain the situation in their villages. And the right-wing government got to a conclusion that this is a very slow mode of getting rid of the phenomenon of illegal housing among the Arab population, ignoring the fact that this phenomenon is caused mainly by lack of planning from the side of the government in these villages. That means the government is not giving the opportunity for the Arab minority in these villages to get building permits, and as a reaction, or as the Arabs themselves start to build their houses with no building permits. We have also to mention that the new amendment for the law called the Kaminsky Law is placing a very harsh punishments on the Arab population. That means some of the fines could reach to 500,000 shekels, which is about $150,000. And imagine somebody getting a fine like this, he will be a slave to pay this debt all of his life, okay? And these kind of punishments and fines, you cannot find them in any other pieces of legislations or laws in Israel. It's just indicating the harshness of this piece of legislation, and the people who feel it and suffer from it, mainly the Arabs in general, but especially the Bedouins in these unrecognized villages. And the last piece of legislation that I really wanted to mention that has been that the government enacted in 2003 is what we call the Family Unification Law. It was an amendment for the citizenship law in 2003. And basically that piece of legislation prevented the Arabs in Israel from getting any kind of what we call domestication for their wives or partners from the occupied Palestinian territories, from the West Bank, okay? This legislation started as a temporary one for 6 months, but as we have seen, these 6 months have been there until today. That means since 2003 until today, about 17 years. These 6 months became the 17 years. About 40,000 Arab Israeli families are affected by this law, and this law is very harsh because it's preventing married people to bring to Israel their wives, and many times forcing families to live in a very harsh and separate way. So the husband in Israel, the wife in the West Bank. I don't want to go further in and talk about this law, but I want to give these examples as a picture and to say that both the civil society organizations, what we call the NGOs, and many political leaders have not been able to make a really true change in Israel that could change the situation of the Arabs in Israel. And that's why the Joint List is trying to take this opportunity to join the government, or at least to determine what kind of government to have in order to also put the demands and the demands for the Arab minority in Israel and the need for changes. And as we have heard recently, was the cancellation of the Kaminsky law was one of the basic requirements from Gantz to get the support of the Joint List. Okay, so finally, summarizing this, I want to say that this is a very important subject and topic, and we have seen that the Joint List is stepping in with all of its strength, political strength, that have reached 15 Knesset members in order to try to make a change in the political arena in Israel in several levels. I will leave it here and waiting for your questions if you have any of your questions to ask about any of these things.
Thank you very much, Morad. And I think you gave us some of the reasons why that shift that Salman, you have initially told us why this shift happened in the Arab vote. I think we could also add to this that, of course, no Arab party so far has been really part of a governing coalition. There was a short period under Rabin where they supported the government, but usually it is clear that it has to be a Jewish majority in Israel, and that the government ministers so far have also not been part of the Arab minority. I just, if I may say that, Morad, you mentioned the family unification law. Let me just say how much this impacts. This is not something abstract, and it actually also concerns Dr. Elsana and his own family. Your wife is from Bethlehem. You're from near Beersheba. You're an Israeli citizen. She grew up in the West Bank, and you cannot go back and live together in either Israel or the West Bank together with your 4 children. So that is a real issue for you and, of course, many other people. And I just think it's important to see the real consequences of these laws for Israeli Arab citizens. Let me just not go further with my own questions to both of you. I think we have people waiting to ask their questions, both about the elections or about more general questions. If not, I have a lot of questions for you. But I saw in our chat already a few comments and questions, and maybe Laura.
Yes, hi. So the first question comes from American University professor Aran Carmel. Aran, did you want to ask your own question? We can unmute you, I hope. If not, I'll begin to read the question. In this round, the Joint List had an opportunity to spearhead a change to remove Bibi. That didn't happen for several reasons, but a key reason is that the Joint List stepped back into narrow political demands. Why? Doesn't it want to get rid of Bibi? That's the first question.
Okay, do you want me to answer it?
Sure.
And let's keep the answers short so we can get as many as possible.
Oh, there's Aran.
Sure.
Did you want to add anything more? No. Okay. Go, Morad.
Okay. First of all, I still think that the main goal for the joint list is to get rid of Bibi Netanyahu, and they have never give up this goal. And the second, it's with a very similar importance, is to get rid of the general rule for the right wing in Israel. I think that the picture changed after Gantz himself left the center-left bloc and went to join Bibi Netanyahu in order to form a government. The joint list presented a very legitimate requirement for the maybe for Gantz and for his bloc, but that wasn't the main reason for Gantz to leave for Bibi Netanyahu. And I think that this answers the question.
Thank you. Maybe I would put the next sentence.
Sorry, Michael.
Am I mute? Am I okay? I mean, it was a big step, I think, for the joint list after the last elections to propose Benny Gantz to the president of Israel as prime minister, and that gave him the 61 votes he needed to be asked to form a coalition. As we know, he's preparing to give a speech in a few minutes where he most likely will concede that he was not able to form the coalition. But who knows? It's still a few hours' time until it comes back to the president. Everything is possible in Israel.
We have a question from a current student, Evan DeWitt. Evan, do you want to introduce yourself and ask your question? I've unmuted you.
All right. Hi, I'm Evan. I'm a freshman at AU. I'm in Dr. Elsana's Arabs in Israel class. We've been learning a lot about the changing identities of Arabs in Israel, and we talked specifically about the future vision documents in the late, or like around 2007, and the work of NGOs. And I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts about a possible connection between those two things and the rise of the joint list.
Should we maybe, Salman, do you want to take this on, or Morad? Salman?
What exactly the question, Michael?
So I think this directly relates to the reason why Morad is with us today. It has to do with the human rights bar in Israel and the rise of certain NGOs that have tried to impact the changing identity and conditions of the Arabs in Israel. Morad was actually part of a program initiated by American University 35 years ago, which brought an Israeli Arabs law student and a Jewish Israeli law student together for a year to get a master's in law. And those graduates of 35 years of the program have really formed the human rights bar in Israel. Morad, did you want to address that question?
Yeah, I think I got the question. Thank you, Evan, for being here. I'm so happy that my students are showing interest of the subject and the topics we're teaching. This only indicates the importance of these topics for many of the students at the United States, so especially those who have an interest in Middle Eastern studies and Arab studies and Israel-Arab conflict studies, all these topics. So, as you mentioned, Evan, this is a really very important question that shows another reason why this shift in both in the rates and the numbers of Arabs who are going to vote for the joint list and leaving many of the Israeli Zionist or the Jewish Zionist parties in Israel. And Evan mentioned here that there is a very important thing that's going on in Israel, which we have seen in recent years, which is a change on people's identity in Israel. That means people used to define themselves in maybe 20 or 30 years more as an Israelis in Israel and less an Arab and Palestinians in Israel or citizens of Israel. After in the 90s, after Oslo agreements and the communications and the negotiation with the Palestinian Authority, and it became to be less, or it became to be more acceptable in Israel for Arab Israeli citizens to define themselves as the Palestinians, citizens of Israel, and that happened truly. But there have been also many reasons that affected this change and caused for many Arabs in Israel to start to neglect or to, let's say, to define themselves more an Arab Israeli or more as Palestinians in Israel and less as Israelis, especially in light of so many laws and policies that discriminate against the Arabs in Israel in different levels. I remember once a friend of mine told me about a case for a Bedouin soldier who was serving in Gaza with the IDF. And when he went back to his unrecognized village, he found out that they demolished his house. So that guy, he shifted 180 degrees. That means instead of using to serve in the army and believe in himself as a citizen of the states and serving his state, he started to define himself in totally opposite a definition. That means he started to define himself more as an Islamist guy, more as a Palestinian, more and less an Israeli. This is only a small example of many other people who have been practicing this change in Israel, but also we have to look at the policies that this right-wing government has been executing, has been doing for the Arab minority in Israel in order to push them out of the general discourse of Israeli citizens in Israel. And here I want to mention one of these articles about this subject was written by nobody else than Dr. Salman Elbedour here. He written a very good article about how the policies of this government and this right-wing government is changing many of the Arabs in Israel, especially the Bedouins themselves, sense of identity and belonging in Israel.
Maybe I'll make, maybe Michael, I'll make a comment here. That study was conducted during maybe, I think, 2 years after the assassination of Rabin. I think in the past, absolutely, the dominant identity are Israeli Arab, but I think with time, with discriminations, with the evaluation, and absolutely the connection with the Palestinian, marriages with the Palestinians, all of this mass media, they played a serious role in shifting the identity and absolutely the exclusion policy. They shifted the identity of the individuals, mostly they start referring to themselves Israeli Palestinians or Palestinians. But if you think about it, Morad, let us say, I think, from the beginning, me, myself, I really don't support that one Israeli Arab party by itself. I think, it's just like it will make more damage to the rift between we and they, that's it, between the Israel and the Israeli Arab. I think it will make more damage by having yourself as outsider, as external and not integrated. In the long run, I don't see it will influence the power direction in Israel. In fact, it will enlarge the rift, enlarge the evaluation, accusation of each other Israeli, accusing the Israeli Arab and the Israeli Arab accusing. So if you think about it, I think the approach, absolutely, I don't support that the joint list by itself made completely 89% of Israeli Arab who absolutely Palestinians to be the external body and to fight or to compete with the power called Israeli Jewish. So it's a kind of becoming like what? It's just like becoming like South Africa, the white and the black. And so from that foundation, I really think that nothing will emerge, more hatred, more racism, more discrimination, more blaming each other, the Israeli and the Israeli Arab. So, and we had the number 13 Israeli Arab member during Netanyahu a long time ago. What did they do? Absolutely, when you are outsider, you always, I think your power will be less. I would suggest maybe in the future election they should be integrated within the Israeli Jewish parties much better, more, they have more impact, and I think they have much better influence in shaping the policy, for their own benefits, much better than to be outsider. That's my comment.
So we have two
Laura,
last.
I had a question that I think you might have missed, or maybe it didn't get posted.
I was about to post it, Anne. I was about to mention it.
Oh, okay. Because
Thanks.
there's a second half to it too. I had asked, is there any chance that a new candidate for prime minister may emerge who can make the changes the Arabs seek? But additionally, if there is, heaven forbid, a fourth election, where does the joint list go?
You're asking hard questions.
Sure. Should we take another question, which is?
Yes, so we have another question that was asked, has to do with have the Israeli Arab feelings towards Iran shifted through the years? And finally, a master's student, Ezekiel Caceres from the Fletcher School at Tufts, is asking, would you say that historical events impact the Arab citizens of Israel's voting habits throughout the years? In other words, do you believe there are periods of time where the electorate is more compelled to go to the poll and less compelled? And that was for Dr. Elbedour specifically, I guess, why there have been so many more coming this year.
And I said, absolutely, just like, the external events, like, for instance, if you go back, if you regress back in, 1996, I think they gave, if you remember the statistics from the slide, they gave Netanyahu 22. I think it was not, it was reaction to what happened with Shimon Peres, invasion to Lebanon and some kind of, attacks in Lebanon. I think, absolutely, I think, the deal of the century, as indicated in one of the slides, it has direct impact on the numbers, because absolutely it directly impact the lives of the Israeli Arab. Big number are supposed to be based on this plan, according to this plan, to be displaced from their home and to go to what? To live in the West Bank. Now, to live in the West Bank, suddenly to strip them from their Israeli identity, from their citizenship, from the rights, and then suddenly to find themselves in the next stage, the next fence. In fact, if you go back to the West Bank people, really, I taught in Berzeit. I taught in Berzeit 1 year. I was really shocked by the fact lots of Palestinians say, hey, I think we don't mind going back to the Israeli occupation rather than Arafat occupation. So it's just like, external events like a Trump. This is, the deal of the century, absolutely impacted, affected, and increased the number of those who go to the vote. This is just one example.
Yes, Morad, do you want to?
So Anne's question, I don't know if we got an answer to.
And there was another question I just for the
student. Yeah, Lily Poramad, who is a senior at American University, is asking, do you think the family unification law will be abolished? To my understanding, extended in 2016, despite much criticism from human rights advocates claiming the law is discriminatory.
I would like to tell you that at the beginning, when they enacted this law and they started to talk about it, I was a little bit optimist. I used to work as a human rights advocate and lawyer in one of the leading organizations in Israel. And I said to myself, it is impossible that the Supreme Court in Israel, with a very liberal views, like the previous Chief Justice Aharon Barak, will not agree to have this racist law stay, and they will revoke it, they will cancel it, if not this year, maybe next year. Unfortunately, I had this hope for now 17 years. And I have to remind you that we appealed against this law for no less than 3 or 4 times to the Supreme Court. And the bench in the Supreme Court also have changed with this right-wing government. They added more, less liberal right-wing justices to the Supreme Court. So unfortunately, I have to go back and be more pessimist and tell you that I don't think that this law will be revoked or changed in the near future, especially as we continue to have right-wing governments with Bibi Netanyahu and his friends.
Okay, thank you both Salman and Morad. I know we have more questions, but our time is running out. I'm sure the questions will be answered individually. Let me just conclude by saying it is, of course, it is in a way sad that the success of this party, which emerged as the third largest party in these elections, does not really translate into political reality. And I think that is frustrating, not just for the party, but for the voters of this party. And in the end, it is also what is at stake is Israel's self-definition as a Jewish and democratic state. And I think if Israel hopefully will remain a strong democracy, a strong democratic state, not just Jewish state, it needs to take seriously what more than 20% of its citizens believe, how they vote, and ultimately also integrate a party like the Joint List as a possible partner in a governing coalition, which, by the way, Benny Gantz also said he would not do that. Maybe things will change after we start again counting for a new government tonight or tomorrow. As it looks now, and I think that was one of the questions about the polls, it seems that the Joint List actually might emerge even stronger from a fourth election, but the party that mainly emerges stronger is Likud. So it will be at the expense of the Jewish, more center left-wing parties, and certainly not of Likud. But that is an interesting tendency. Let me thank you all. Let me thank especially our two very competent speakers, but also for your questions and for staying on, even though we do this all virtually online. We're planning to have more sessions. We don't have any concrete date yet, but we will let you know very soon. And I hope that you all stay healthy. And for those who celebrate Passover, happy Passover. For those who start celebrating Ramadan, happy holidays to all of you, and happy Easter, of course, as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Laura and Michael. And it's a pleasure to be and to talk with you in these days.
Thank you.
Thank you.